Shall we dance? If I were to say that to you one fine evening, what would your reaction be? It's pretty scary to get up and do a waltz, but you won't be able to resist today on A Note to You. I always knew about fancy waltzes, like the ones by Strauss, but not having thought about it, there appear to be waltzes to suit every occasion. There's, of course, the ballroom variety, the grand orchestral ones, and then there are the intimate little piano pieces. It all started in Vienna at the end of the 18th century, when composers like Haydn, who loved the old Germanic dances, were adapting them for the ballrooms of the aristocracy. Here's a sweet little one that Haydn wrote for an elegant occasion. Just imagine women with beautiful dresses, pencil-thin men, not trying to fall all over their swords. Let's listen to this little Haydn waltz. We just heard a little Haydn waltz played by the Boskovsky Ensemble, and Willy Boskovsky conducted it. Well, in trying to sort of take us on a grand tour of waltzdom, you certainly have to move to the creator of the grand waltzes, Johann Strauss Sr. And he was growing up in the early 19th century, sort of right on the heels of that Haydn waltz. He's born in 1804, and there's always a confusion around the Strauss name because both the father and the son have the same name. Now, the Johann Strauss who started the whole waltz craze grew up. He was the son of a father who ran an inn, and the father was aware that musicians tended to be sort of miserable about playing and frequently drank too much. And the one thing he certainly didn't want was for his son to grow up to be a wretched musician. So he let him play a violin when he was little. And there's a crazy anecdote where the violin was very screechy, but young Johann experimented by pouring beer in the F-holes. It made the violin sound better. So he was doing that when he was about 4, 5, and 6. And the father was realizing that he was becoming obsessed with playing the violin. So he took it away from him, much to Johann's sadness, and stuck him in a counting school. And it would have been the end of that, except that Johann's mother aided and abetted him and snuck a violin to him so he could sort of keep on practicing and advancing. And he eventually gave up on accounting, and he formed a young waltz band. And it was an idea that hadn't really sort of caught on in Vienna. He dragged his little ragtag band up to Paris, and then they even eventually dragged themselves over to London. But the whole concept of waltzing for the whole evening was too novel. People were used to waltzing, but to just get up and do 3/4 dances for 2 or 3 hours, that idea hadn't been born yet. And poor old Johann gets very sick in London, and his loyal clarinetist, a man named Reichmann, stays with him because all the musicians are very, very disappointed. They're not paid, and English society doesn't really like the waltz, and the whole thing seems like a dreadful idea. Poor Johann is dragged back to Vienna, practically dies, and he manages to turn himself around. And it's as though by doing that, the people in Vienna finally realized that they had some kind of a unique thing in their midst. And when he got better, he planned a concert. And by then the public was ready for this. And ever since that return engagement, people have never stopped loving the waltz. It was so he had to sort of just ride it out. Let's listen to a waltz by Johann Sr. It's called Hofballtanz, also played by the Boskowski Ensemble. A very pretty waltz by Johann Strauss Sr. And you noticed how the violin has really become the soloistic instrument on top. The violin has the melody, and this little ensemble accompanies the violin. Whereas in Mozart's time, the piano was certainly the key to having the melody, and the orchestra followed. Well, Johann Strauss had 3 daughters and a son. And that son, also named Johann, grew up to follow in his father's footsteps. Junior also had a mother who aided and abetted him, since Johann Sr., when he started to make so much money and became the darling of Vienna, he left the household to go live with his, sounds sort of sleazy mistress. And he had 4 more children with her, and they lived in a room, according to the legend, with a monkey and a dog, which sounds disgusting. So Johann also plays the violin, and my advice to you is to listen to the waltz coming up, and you'll hear that the orchestra has a much bigger sound. The son lays on more instruments, and the sound is going to change also. Before, it was very elegant and tight, and Johann Jr.'s orchestration is very much bolstered and starts to have the real ballroom sound that we associate with waltzes. So let's listen to a Johann Jr. It's called Morning Papers. What a glorious sound. It makes me want to just hop out of my chair. That was a waltz by Johann Strauss Jr. And I'm looking at a wonderful book that describes the 1870s. And apparently Johann Jr. was invited to come over to America. There was a Boston Peace Festival, and it was put on sort of by Barnum and Bailey. And the whole notion was anything that they had in Europe should be bigger and better in America. And they approached Strauss, and he said he'd only come if they sent $100,000 in advance, and it had to be put in a bank in Vienna. And when he got to America, he was appalled by us. He found us a land of grotesque improbability. And a man named Gilmore got this huge band together of about 1,000 musicians, and Strauss was stationed in a kind of a lookout tower, and he had to look through a binocular down at the musicians, and he was appalled by that too. It was a circus event, but he did need the money, just like his father, because he had a big family himself. And it sounds like he didn't have a good time on his visit to America, but we certainly love the waltz to this day. Now, the next important figure who pops up in the evolution is Franz Lehár. And if the Strauss father and son invented the whole waltz concept, Lehár took it to the next level. And he owes a great debt, actually, to Wagner and Mahler. Up until now, all these waltzes have been in a major key, and they've been very sprightly and no bad things. Lehár, being of a more complicated mindset, decided that he would put in minor keys, and there are many more harmonic devices. And he also added, just like Johann Jr. had done, more musicians. Only in this waltz that we're going to listen to, he adds woodwinds and even a harp, and it's called the Gold and Silver Waltz. And it glitters. It really does. Well, that really did glitter, didn't it? It had a little sort of a voluntary at the end there, which was certainly reminiscent maybe of Wagner, and that's what Franz Lehár wanted us to think. It was played by the Vienna Johann Strauss Orchestra, all again with Willy Boskowski conducting. And Boskowski really has been a pioneer in resurrecting that very special way that waltzes have to be played, where the downbeat almost trips on the second beat. Later on in the program, we're going to talk about Chopin, and his mazurkas are sort of Polish waltzes. But now, we've been listening to big fancy waltzes. Let's scope down to a small size waltz. Schubert would write these Ländler sometimes for singers on a lieder recital. They would be able to get the key of the song they were going to sing. It would give them a chance to breathe. And apparently Brahms was a big admirer of these Ländler that Schubert had written, and he counted a manuscript in his possession as one of his most prized things that he owned. And he arranged several of the Ländler into a four-hand set. And we're going to listen to one of them because I want you to have that flavor on our program, played by Bradshaw and Buono. See, that has a very sweet sound. It's very gentle. Well, I hope you're enjoying being waltzed around by us. If you have a comment about the program, we really do love to hear from you. Our address is A Note to You, care of WGBH Radio, 125 Western Avenue, Boston, Massachusetts, 02134. And our email address is a note to you at wgbh.org. When you write, let us know the name of your public radio station. Coming up, we're going to hear waltzes by Chopin, Tchaikovsky, and Ravel. A Note to You is made possible by the friends and alumni of Northeastern University. Well, no program on waltzes should be without Chopin, because he took the form probably over the top, especially as an art form for the pianist. The only thing that's difficult about a Chopin waltz is I don't think you can get up and really have a good time with a partner in the living room. The other day when we were talking about this program, my producer and I started waltzing around in the office. We were trying to figure out what exactly is so hard about a waltz. And as a boy, he was taught you make a box. And I was taught that I should just aim at the downbeat. Well, when you're a pianist, playing Chopin waltzes requires yet another hitch. You have to sort of go to the second beat, because in mazurkas, the downbeat is shifted to the second beat. And it's not exactly as clear as it had been in all these other waltzes that we've been listening to. Chopin also adds many fancy bits for the right hand, and it becomes a pianistic exercise. And the one I've chosen for us to listen to is called the Grand Waltz Brilliant, and it's played by a Canadian pianist, Bernardine Blaha. rather grand. That was the Grand Waltz Brillante in A flat. Well, Tchaikovsky, I think, retires the cup when it comes to waltzes because before he's through, there are the great ballets that center around waltzes. He puts them in all of his symphonies. He uses waltzes in the great piano trio in A minor. There are 2 waltzes, in fact, in that great piece. And then he uses them in little piano works, too. More than any other composer, I believe. And I guess my favorite has to be the 3rd movement of the 5th Symphony. I love the way Tchaikovsky takes the ugly duckling, quacky sound of the bassoon, and in that waltz, he turns really the bassoon into a beautiful swan, which is Tchaikovsky. And we heard Kurt Masur conducting the New York Philharmonic in that beautiful, beautiful waltz. Our last turn around the ballroom today is the great Ravel composition, which actually was created for Diaghilev, but apparently Diaghilev didn't mount a production of it, even though just around that time he certainly had done the Stravinsky Firebird and the Rite of Spring. He said that it wasn't suitable for dancers, the Ravel La Valse, and it also said it was too expensive to mount, and I think it disappointed Ravel very much. And when you listen to this one, it's more of a tone poem. It's supposed to be a commentary on the decadence of old Vienna, and it starts in a very low, growly way, and then in the end, it's kind of a demonic, in-your-face waltz. It's not at all pretty. It's more a savage taking down of the waltz form. So let's go into the underworld. Let's listen to the Boston Symphony Orchestra, Charles Munch conducting, playing Ravel's La Valse. hope you weren't waltzing to that, because now you're lying on the floor. That was Maurice Ravel's La Waltz, which of course is a social commentary on that great dance form. Well, all good things have to come to an end, and unfortunately, the great waltz tour that we were indulging ourselves on is over. On a note to you, thanks to our engineer for today's program, Jeannie Pippick. Our producer is Alan McClellan, and I'm your dance instructor, Virginia Eskin. A Note to You is made possible by the friends and alumni of Northeastern University. It's produced by Northeastern University in cooperation with WGBH Radio Boston.